Fitzmagic.
All right, back to the Cowboys and the standoff
Josh
that is.
heard that with them big ears he got.
Zeke versus Dallas. Zeke wants a hefty new deal. Cowboys clearly taking issue with the hefty part, mainly because Ezekiel Elliott isn't the only player Dallas needs to pay. Dak Prescott and Amari Cooper both looking for new deals as well. But according to Stephen Jones, taking care of them won't be easy.
That's my goal, is at the end of the day, we figure out a contract for Dak, for Amari, for Zeke that's fair, that's one they can be satisfied with. But at the same time, they've got to understand there's a real salary cap out there, and any money that we save in their situations, and it's not their job to manage the cap. I agree with that. That's our job to do. But any money we save is not going in Jerry's pocket. It's going to another football player. I mean, it's a hard cap. It's reality. We have to deal with it. And, you know, at some point, the money we spend on these great players are going to keep us, unfortunately, from probably signing a couple guys that we'd like to keep.
It's like selective memory. It's like the Stephen Jones that we heard from early in the season isn't the same Stephen Jones who suddenly was like, well, hold off. Yeah, we would love to pay you guys, but we got to be a little conservative with our hard cap. Well, what was your reaction to what Stephen Jones had to say?
What he's saying is absolutely correct.
It is.
And I mean, nothing he's saying is wrong. It's just, to your point, not consistent with the messaging they've had previously. And once again, it's a reminder what has thrown off the Cowboys' planning is they did plan to pay Zeke in a year. They did not plan to have to make this decision right now. And here's the spot they find themselves in. Everyone talks about Dak and Amari only having 1 year left on their deal. Well, there's another guy who only has 1 year left on his deal. And unlike Dak and Amari, he was actually on the All-Pro team last year. And that's cornerback Byron Jones, a first-round pick that they want to keep. Next season, they already have under contract those 3 All-Pro offensive linemen who all make between $12 to $15 million next year. That is just assuming Lyle Collins walks out the door, Jalen Smith, who's a pending free agent as well, that they do or don't get something figured out with him. So, yeah, the Cowboys are in an incredibly rough spot, not because they don't have cap room, because next year they have, I think, the 5th most cap room of any team. But that's only because none of these guys have been signed. They know that cap room is spoken for, and they are going to have to make a hard decision. You cannot have 3 of the highest paid offensive linemen in the league on your team while also having one of the 5 highest paid quarterbacks, one of the 10 highest paid wide receivers, and the highest paid running back. You just can't. And so they seem to be leaning towards this entire time to paying Dak first and figuring the rest out. And the other part of this that I think maybe has screwed up their budgeting a bit is I think what Carson Wentz got and what Dak is demanding is coming in higher than they expected. That they thought they were going to be able to get Dak in the $22 to $26 million a year range, and Dak is talking in the $30 to $34 million a year range, and that's problematic. So none of this is wrong. It just, what these comments make wrong are the previous comments of promising everybody money whenever some local radio reporter would ask you about them.
Well, it's a constant issue in Dallas, the messaging, when they say it, and the obligations that the owner and other people in the front office make to the media. Jerry's doing a show every week. So every week we get sound bites off of potentially what could be a problem. If you continue to do that, go to New England. Kraft never says anything because he knows that Belichick, he might not be able to live up to it. So you don't get that cross messaging in Dallas because they're such high profile and how they run their family business. It's going to always be an issue. The one thing that Amari, one thing that Dak, and one thing that Zeke, more so than those other players on the Cowboys, that they need to realize is, I'm playing for the Dallas Cowboys. All 3 of those guys are very, very marketable and can make at least 7 figures off the field every year. I would calculate that in as far as being a legendary Dallas Cowboy player compared to some other player. So I would calculate that in. If I'm Zeke, I got 2 years left on my deal, I would be trying to get more guarantees. Forget about the average per year. I would be doing that. If I'm getting Dak, I'm giving them a hometown discount, and I'm telling them, all right, I'm going to give you a hometown discount this time, but I plan on staying here for a long time. Amari Cooper was with the Raiders. And now he's with the Cowboys that he said he wants to stay with for a long period of time. So I just hope all three of those players, because they're not in the same class as Byron Jones and some of those other defenders and everything who aren't as marketable.
Sure.
They're making real money off the field
right,
because of that star on that helmet.
If you could keep two of those three players, because it seems like that's really all they can afford, who do you keep?
If I could, I'd keep
Okay,
Zeke and Amari. I'd pay Zeke and Amari, and I'd make Dak go prove it. Prove me wrong, Dak. Cost me money. Make me make a tough decision. Make me to where I can't put the franchise tag on you. You make it to where I've got to make you one of the highest paid guys in the league. But I don't think he'd be able to do that. I think that you would see the value come down a bit. And, I mean, the NFL 100, it's a flawed list. I understand. But, man, they got 15 quarterbacks in that top 100. The lowest ranked is Carson Wentz. Nobody is looking at that list and saying, man, Dak got snubbed. That's 15 names. The vast majority of people think, okay, at his position are better than him. There's only 32 teams. He is the definition of a league average quarterback, which in 2019 is a good quarterback because there's so much talent in the league. I mean, to me, that's what I would do. But there's a lot of things the Cowboys did that I wouldn't have done. I'd have been squeamish about paying DeMarcus Lawrence second most money any defensive players, or third most money any defensive players ever made. But they did that. They did that with their offensive linemen. All of a sudden, you got a lot of really good players that are being paid like great players, and it's preventing you from paying the one great player on your roster, Zeke Elliott.
One of Dallas's problems is that they're part of all these shows. There's other guys on teams that are good players being paid great salaries, but we're not talking about them.
No doubt.
They have salary cap issues just like the Cowboys, but these are the Cowboys.
All right, let's move on to the Saints now. Their 2018 season ended in controversial fashion in the NFC title game against the Rams. And according to former Saints running back Mark Ingram, that's still a bitter pill to swallow. He said that is something that no one on our team, no one in our organization will ever get over. That is tough. When you get to that point, basically one play from the Super Bowl, there's no justifying that. There's no comfort in that. Cece, what do the Saints have to do to break through and win the Super Bowl?
Well, the last couple of years have been tough. 2 years ago, the miracle in Minneapolis in the divisional round, they have that game won. All they got to do is defend the Hail Mary, knock the ball down. That's all they got to be able to do. Stephon Diggs takes it in. Vikings go on to lose to the Eagles. They go on to win the Super Bowl. Then last year, you think you can't top that. Oh, they did. They got home field advantage. They're playing the Rams. They got the, I mean, that was a great football game that was destroyed by a controversial call that changed the game. People say, well, you don't know if they're going to win. No, we don't know that, but you know that a bad call was allowed to continue, which shouldn't have been there now that they've changed the rules. That's how obvious it was to the NFL. Can they recover? You can never go back. You think Tom Brady right now, you got 6 Super Bowls, right? How many could he have had?
9, certainly 7.
And that's the way he thinks. That's one of the things you're like, man, why is the guy out there? Because of those missed opportunities. Man, I got close twice. 2 times in 3 years, we're in the NFC Championship game. Neither time did I take it for granted that, you know something, this is going to happen all the time. I don't think that they're going to recover because Drew Brees, if you look at the quarterbacks and the teams in the NFC, man, you got to run that gauntlet again. And are they as talented? I think their offense might have a little more variation than they have. Adding Jared Cook as a tight end, I believe he's going to have an unbelievable season with Drew Brees. Drew Brees is the best quarterback that he's ever played with, and his ability to create mismatches and his overall speed, I believe they take huge advantage of it. No, you don't go backwards, because even if Drew Brees was to go on and win another Super Bowl, he's going to look back and be like, man, I should have won 3 if he has 2.
And so, listen, what do they need to do? I know Coach Mangini will say that years don't start where they finish. I get that. But they need to do exactly what they've done the last 2 years, which is, aside from a bad, very, very beginning to a season, they've been as good as anyone in football. 2 years ago, they start off 0-2. They then reel off 12. They go 12-3 until the Minneapolis Miracle. Last year, they started off 0-1. They lost to Fitzy and the Bucks, if you remember, in that shootout back and forth. They went 13-1 after that, until a meaningless Week 17 game where they already had the 1 seed locked up. The only loss was that shocking nationally televised loss to the Cowboys. I think it was 13-10, that defensive battle. They were the best team in football after week 1 last year until that non-call in the NFC Championship game. And what I'll say about that non-call is this. They could have won despite the non-call,
yes,
but had the call been made, they would have won. It would have been game over in that situation if the call's made there. Now, they still can blame themselves for losing in overtime, letting Jared Goff drive the field. I understand that. But where you're nervous for the Saints is this. They're in a tough division, and those teams competing with them in their division, the Falcons and Panthers, have had the injury bug come up and bite them the last couple of years, right? Falcons had their whole defense injured last year. Cam Newton got hurt last year for Carolina. The Saints been pretty fortunate injury-wise these last 2 years. And when you have home field going through your building, when you're in good situation injury-wise, when your quarterback is doing something only one other quarterback at his age has ever done, those are the moments that you need to take advantage of. Those are the moments where your safety needs to not dive out of bounds, needs to make the tackle against Minnesota, where you need to get the right call against the Rams, and they didn't. So I think they're an excellent team, but we know it's very hard to have 3 straight great years in a row, and I would say the Saints have had great years back-to-back already.
Even though Sean Payton, Drew Brees, people don't look at them, at their offense as a physical offense, they've been able to add the physical component because Mark Ingram been special playing with Kamara. Now you don't have Mark Ingram. How do they get back to doing that? I'm concerned about the usage of Kamara as a running back. He is not a 20-carry-a-game guy. So I don't think using him 20 times a game in that capacity makes them better. I do believe their defense will be better than what they were last year.
And just real quick to your point, see, that we don't always talk about the other guys on other teams that they're holding out or have contract things. Their best receiver, Michael Thomas, still ain't, they still got something to work out with him heading into this year as he's trying to finally get paid.
And to your point on Mark Ingram, if you want to protect Brees, we don't talk about his age at all, but if you want to give him a little bit of protection towards the durability for the whole season, you would like to have someone in there like a Mark Ingram that could run the ball, especially late in the season. All right, we'll take a break. Coming up, could the Cowboys actually trade Ezekiel Elliott?